Some phrases here, too, that sum up the argument that Darwin makes in his piece. Man is the co-descendant with other mammals. Man's descended from a hairy quadruped, furnished with a tail and pointed ears, probably arboreal in its habits. An early progenitor of all the vertebrata must have been an aquatic individual. So, very inflammatory for people of the time period. In looking at the selection that you have here too, I think you have some summing up of the central key points of Darwin's work, but also there are some passages too that suggest the way he challenged notions about other aspects of Victorian life. For example, over on page 1621, he describes here the peahens and describes to the beautiful plumage of the male birds of paradise or peacocks. About halfway through the second paragraph on the page, there's a sentence that starts, "But we really know very little about the minds of the lower animals." It cannot be supposed that male birds of paradise or peacocks, for instance, should take so much pains in erecting, spreading, and vibrating their beautiful plumes before the females for no purpose. We should remember the fact given on excellent authority in a former chapter, namely that several peahens, when debarred from an admired male, remained widows during our whole season rather than pair with another bird. So the birds made the decision that the female birds made the decision that they would not mate with another. In the middle of the next paragraph, too, if so, he must likewise admit that the female was created and endowed with the capacity of appreciating such ornaments. I differ only in the conviction that the male Argus pheasant acquired his beauty gradually, through the females having preferred during many generations the more highly ornamented males. What he is saying here then is that the females had a choice. They made a choice, and that's how the species evolved. So in many ways here, he is suggesting too that the female who in human societies is supposed to be passive and pure. Here he is suggesting that in this instance, the female is the one who essentially makes the decisions. He also, if you flip over to page 1612, he notes that he describes the barbarians that he says human beings, current humans, have descended from. They were absolutely naked and bedabbed with paint. Their long hair was tangled, their mouths frothed with excitement, and their expression was wild, startled, and distrustful. He ends this paragraph essentially by saying, well, he would rather be descended from a monkey than a barbarian such as that. And so I think he describes human history in very graphic and tough terms too, pointing to, although human beings believe they are ascending, moving upward, notice that the title of his selection is The Descent of Man. Notice it as well at the end of this paragraph when he tells the story about the little monkey. For my own part, I would as soon be descended from that heroic little monkey who braved his dreaded enemy in order to save the life of his keeper, or from that old baboon who, descending from the mountains, carried away in triumph his young comrade from a crowd of astonished dogs. He refers to these stories that have made their way around of animals essentially doing these heroic acts. I think, too, he is suggesting animals might have a moral sense. I think this would be something that would have been off-putting for people of the time period and would have questioned, too, the hierarchy in the animal kingdom with human beings at the top if animals have a moral sense. So the impact of Darwin then, we do see him upending society in these examples that we have. The worldview that he suggests with evolution is one that's still debated today. If you look at the impact, too, of Darwinism on literature, we see at the end of the 19th century in the 1890s, and this is a period that will be covered in the fourth survey, not in this one, but we're kind of in a transitional stage here. And looking toward to where literature is going to go after the coverage of our class. With the Civil War and the post-Civil War period in the 1890s, we do see a group of writers coming to the forefront called the naturalists. Stephen Crane is one of those writers. Here is the perspective in this quote. I think it's an excellent one to show the worldview of the naturalist writer. It is a very dark view, but in many ways it is a view that transitions us into modern literature of the 20th century. This is a short passage from The Blue Hotel, a short story by Stephen Crane. He refers in this story to lice being human beings on the earth. Lice which were caused to cling to a whirling, fire-smitten, ice-locked, disease-stricken, space-lost globe. That globe being the earth, suggesting too, in this worldview, that there is no great being who is watching over us. There is no God, but that we are diminished to being described as lice here, and there seems no meaning in the universe. So I think that Darwin had an impact on writers from this movement, and he had a great impact on society. Keep in mind, too, though, that during the time period, even though the writings of Darwin were being reviewed in scientific journals and coming to the forefront, many of the time period, too, of everyday people did not know about these theories and held on to religious views. But Darwin did have a powerful impact in the 19th century and certainly well into the 20th century.